I'm Andy Pitman. I work for Plant and Food Research. We're working on zebra chip in New Zealand, and in particular we're interested in tuber transmission and the effects that we observe after tuber transmission of Liberibacter solanacearum. So in our experiments we looked at Liberibacter free, or I should say Liberibacter negative tubers and Liberibacter positive tubers, and we planted those under cage conditions away from the psyllid to look at symptomology through seed tuber transmission. What we observed was quite interesting and in quite contrast to what had been discussed in and presented by US researchers, and that was that we saw quite a lot of sprouting. Over 90% of our tubers sprouted, even if they had Liberibacter present. And I think in the US the maximum amount is about 40% that's been documented. We also observed that the plants that grew from Liberibacter positive tubers, when they sprouted, they grew with vigour that was very, very similar to plants that had grown from tubers which were negative for Liberibacter, so there was very little difference. They looked quite healthy plants, and again this was very different to what had been described in the US in terms of early senescence and dying off during the season, and we just didn't observe that only in a couple of our samples. In addition to that, we tested healthy plants that had come from Liberibacter mother tubers, and we observed that Liberibacter could be found in the growing plants, or in the growing plants in the foliage, at about 70% in about 70% of those plants. We also observed a small amount of Liberibacter in tubers at harvest from those mother tubers when they were grown from Liberibacter positive mother tubers, but we didn't see anything that we would consider to be severe zebra chip symptoms. So in summary, I guess what we would say is we appear to have a very different system and a different biology in New Zealand, and that maybe is something that researchers in the US could consider when they're studying tuber transmission.